Hello everyone, welcome back to the Stitches in STEM YouTube channel. My name is Michaela and today I'm going to be showing you all of the yarn that I got on my trip to Australia and New Zealand. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I don't usually do these kind of videos. My usual uploads are knitting updates, what I've finished, what I'm currently working on and what I'm planning on working on. But I just got back from a 3-week trip to Sydney and the North Island of New Zealand. And of course I bought some yarn when I was there, so I wanted to show what I bought. Before I start talking about the yarn, I want to say a big, huge, massive thank you for getting the channel to 5,000 subscribers. It's a phenomenal number to think about, and I can't believe there are over 5,000 people who enjoyed the channel enough to subscribe, and I'm just so grateful, so thank you so much. I was in Sydney at the time. I was visiting my friend there, so we were all out for dinner, and when I said, oh, I'll have a glass of Prosecco to the waiter, she was like, oh yeah, you're celebrating. And he was like, what are you celebrating? And I got really embarrassed. I was like, oh, no. And then she was like, oh, her YouTube channel got 5,000 subscribers. And he was just like, oh, wow. Clearly not impressed at all, but it's a big number to me. I'm so happy. So thank you so much. There will be a giveaway as promised. I'm going to do it in my next podcast episode. I wanted to do the yarn haul first because my yarn is still packed away into like vacuum bags and I wanted to just get it out and organize it and put it away. So the priority was the yarn haul, and in my next podcast episode I will do the 5,000 subscriber giveaway, which I'm very excited about. Before I get started, I do want to say that if you are someone who does not enjoy content about consumerism or overconsumption, some might call this, then this video might not be for you, and there's no hard feelings if you want to click off and watch something else instead. I bought a lot of yarn. If this is your first time watching this channel, this is not the norm for me. This is way more yarn than I've ever bought in one go by a mile. I like to think of my yarn stash as being self-limiting, so I keep all of my yarn in an IKEA Billy bookcase, and basically when the bookcase is full, I don't have a desire to buy more yarn. It actually kind of makes me a little bit stressed to see the bookcase full. I'm like, oh god, I need to start using this yarn, and I have no desire to buy any yarn. When I was going on this trip, it was 70% full, I would say, so it definitely wasn't at a stage where I would be willingly and enthusiastically buying yarn. I did actually have to reassure myself that it was okay to buy all of this yarn. You know, I had to tell myself that you've worked hard, you've saved hard for this trip and for this yarn, specifically for this purpose, so it's okay to spend the money on this yarn. I wasn't going to be back in that part of the world for a long time because it's so far, so it's a once-off, and I just really had to convince myself that it's okay to just make the most of that opportunity. I was in two minds on whether to even talk about this because I know some people would say that I don't have to justify it at all, but there are some people who would wonder, is this normal for her? Like, how big is her stash? There's nothing wrong with having a big stash, but I don't have a massive stash. It is big. It's more than a Billy bookcase can hold now. I'm not at Sable, you know, the stash accumulated beyond life expectancy. I'm not at that point. I'm nowhere near that point. I'd say I have about 2 to 3 years worth of yarn in my stash, which is not too bad, I don't think. So I'll have to figure out where to put all this yarn, but that's okay. I have no regrets about what I bought. Quite the opposite, actually. I'm really excited about all of the yarn that I bought. While I was away, I saw a video from Norman of Nimble Needles, and he was I can't remember, it was called like 5 Ugly Truths About Knitting or something like that. But one of the points he was talking about was overconsumption in knitting YouTube sphere, and he said that the podcasters that you watch will show a yarn that they bought, and chances are you'll never see that yarn again on their channel. And it made me kind of think about the yarn that I've bought since starting this channel, and I think I've used most of it, and maybe not I'd say I've used most of it. And any of the yarn that I haven't used, it's still in my stash less than a year, which is not too bad, I don't think. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. We'll get back to the yarn. When buying this yarn, I did make sure to have a project in mind, or at least a couple of potential projects. You know, if I couldn't decide between 2 projects, at least I had 2 projects that I can pick from when it comes time to use that yarn. There is only one exception to that, and I'll talk about that in due course. When choosing what to buy, I obviously wanted to get yarn that I can't get back home, or else if I can get it, it's too expensive with shipping and customs to justify it. My priority was locally produced yarn or locally sourced yarn, so from sheep farms in Australia and New Zealand. But I also got a few skeins of yarn that was hand-dyed in Australia and New Zealand, but not necessarily sourced there. Like the base might have come from the UK or something, but it was still hand-dyed by a New Zealand dyer or things like that. Want to give a quick shout out to Tash from Mostly Knitting, Sarah and Paige from 2 Pearls in a Pod, and Ash from Smash Knits, who all gave me recommendations, which I did end up buying. And a special shout out to Sarah and Paige from 2 Pearls in a Pod because they are close to 10,000 subscribers. So at least at the time of recording, they might have reached it by the time I upload this. But if you haven't already seen their channel, then I definitely recommend checking it out. It's one of my favorites on YouTube. Although if you're watching this channel, you're probably already aware of them. And a big thank you, of course, to all of you who left comments and recommendations on my last couple of videos on what to do when I was away. I took all of your comments on board and we had an incredible trip. So thank you so much. I don't want to talk about the trip in this video. I might talk about it at the end of my next podcast episode. If you're curious, I've already rambled enough at this. I know, I'm sorry. We'll get to the yarn in a minute, I promise. Just because I know I'll get asked, brief mention of what I'm wearing. It is camisole number 7 by My Favourite Things Knitwear. I knit this in a discontinued yarn from Hobby and I love it. I want to knit another one. The only modifications I made were that I made the straps shorter, and I probably could have made them shorter again, but it's okay for now. I'll link the project page in the description box in case you're wondering exactly what modifications I made. Okay, finally the moment you've been waiting for. I have most of my yarn in vacuum bags. I didn't pack all of it into vacuum bags because you have to source a hoover in the hotel and that can be a bit inconvenient for the cleaners, so I only kind of did it if they were in the room next door and they had the cleaning trolley with them, but maybe they weren't necessarily using the hoover in that time. Like I would kind of walk by the room, look in the door and see if the hoover was out but not in use, and then I'd be like, excuse me, could I use your hoover? And they always said yes, but like I didn't want to be a huge inconvenience, so I didn't pack all of my yarn into vacuum bags on the way home, but they're still handy to have. Would definitely recommend them. Also, one of the bags is leaking, so that completely defeats the purpose. I vacuumed it before we left for the airport, and then when I got to the airport, I decided I wanted to move some things around in my suitcase. So I actually took some things out of the suitcase, and then I couldn't close it again because the bag had inflated so much. Or not inflated. Well, I suppose, yeah, it had inflated because the air got into it. And I struggled to close the suitcase then, but we made it home in one piece, all of my yarn, smushed, but usable. That's the important thing. I will talk about the yarn that I got from Australia first because that's the yarn that I got first. I actually ordered all of this yarn online before the trip and I had it delivered to my friend who lives there. I think that was a really huge benefit of having her there because I didn't do any in-person yarn shopping there. We were so busy. I didn't get a chance to go to Skeen Sisters, which a few people recommended. I did go to Morris & Sons, but I didn't buy anything, and all of this yarn that I got wasn't available in Morris & Sons anyway, so I'm really, really glad that I got the chance to buy yarn online. It just gave me a much larger choice of what I could get instead of having to limit myself to yarn that was available in store. So yeah, I didn't do any in-person yarn shopping in Sydney, but I got a lot of yarn, as you're about to see. So this is the bag that was leaking. There's quite a bit of air in there, so yeah, not vacuumed at all. And obviously this is quite a large bag, so it would have been very helpful if this stayed vacuumed, but in any case, we got home, as I said, in one piece, with much struggling to close the suitcase. Okay, let's open it up. So the first yarn that I got was based on a recommendation from Sarah of Two Pearls in a Pod. She recommended a mill called Great Ocean Road Woollen Mills. They're based in Victoria, Australia, and the wool is grown, sourced and spun there. So that was right up my alley, exactly what I was looking for. The website had some really nice options, a lot of kind of naturally dyed and hand dyed yarns. A lot of wool and alpaca blends. The more prominent yarn that I could see on their website was a merino alpaca blend. They had it in fingering, sport, DK and Aran weight yarn, and they had it in undyed and dyed colours. I knew that I wanted to get an undyed version, and they actually had a section of limited edition yarn or small batch yarn. It was still the merino alpaca, but this one that I got is a salt and pepper one, they called it. So as you can see, it's very clearly a black and white kind of marled effect yarn, and I got the DK weight version, so it's 30% alpaca, 70% merino, and there's 200 meters in 100 grams. I got 6 skeins of this, so 1200 meters. I definitely want to make a cardigan. I haven't decided which cardigan. I don't know if I want to make it v-neck or crew neck. I really like the Calm Down cardigan by Lily Kate Makes, but that is a v-neck. But I do like the kind of shoulder details, so I'm wondering if I should do a crew neck and add those shoulder details in anyway. But then would you really see the shoulder details in this marled yarn? It feels really soft and plump to the touch, so I'm excited to knit it up and see what it looks like in a swatch, or what it feels like in a swatch. I know there's merino and alpaca, which are both soft fibres, but it's more the plumpness of it that is kind of grabbing my attention. So yeah, very excited about these, super excited to work them up. Thank you to Sarah for the recommendation. Also from Great Ocean Road, I got one of their summer fibres. So this is a merino linen blend, and I just realised the label's wrong. It says alpaca merino 4-ply. It's not alpaca merino, it's merino linen, but it is 4-ply, and it's in the dark green colourway. So this one I obviously did get the dyed version. So this one is 70% merino and 30% linen, and there's 460 meters in 100 grams. I got 3 skeins of this, so about 1,380 meters, not about, exactly 1,380 meters, and I'm still not 100% sure what I want to make in this, but I'm thinking, actually I am 100% sure, but I just need to find a pattern or try and make it work with the meterage that I have. I wanted to make basically like a blouse number 1 by My Favourite Things Knitwear, not necessarily that exact pattern, but I wanted kind of a boat neck, long sleeve top. I did purchase this before deciding that I wanted to make a long sleeve top, so that's why I'm saying the meterage might be an issue, because initially I thought I would make like a cumulus tee or something out of this, but now I'm wondering if I will have the meterage for long sleeves. I could do a cumulus tee with long sleeves, because I think the fact that it's a v-neck, it uses a little bit less yarn, but anyway, I have to think about that. The other thing I've seen is that Suzanne Muller just released the Sabai sweater pattern, which is designed for a fingering weight yarn, and the gauge is 21 stitches and 10 centimeters. So still quite open for a fingering weight, but I think it's more in line with what I had in mind for this. So I think I might give it a go with this, and if I have more yarn than I need, I can knit it at a tighter gauge, because I would ultimately like to wear it as a layer on its own. I don't want to wear it as a jumper over something else. And if the gauge is too open, I won't be able to wear it on its own. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. So yeah, I still have to think about this. But as I said, if I have more yarn than I need, which I think I might, then I can just knit at a tighter gauge, but knit up a size so that it still fits me, but that it's denser, and you get the picture. The next yarn I got was also a recommendation from Sarah. I'm very easily influenced. This is from a hand dyer in Australia called Black Wattle Yarn and Fibre. And I got 2 sock yarns, so one for me and one for my boyfriend. I sent my boyfriend the link to the website, and I just asked him to pick out a colour for socks that he would like, and he picked this one, which is called Paradise. As you can see, it's a very vibrant green and yellow colour, which kind of surprised me. I didn't think he would pick this colour. But yeah, that will be a pair of socks for him. And then for myself, I got the colour Paused, which is a beautiful creamy base with kind of a very soft blues in there, and then speckles of kind of a golden brown as well. These were both hand dyed in Australia, so that was the appeal for me. I don't know where the base is from. I had a look on their website and I couldn't find information, but it's hand dyed in Australia, which is, oh sorry, hand dyed on our farm, it says. So I don't know where the base is from, but yeah, hand dyed on their farm, which is good enough for me. The next yarn I got is another hand dyed yarn, but it's also quite a unique fibre to that part of the world, and it is a merino possum yarn, which I was so excited to try. I was definitely keen on getting some merino possum in New Zealand, but when I saw that there was this vibrant hand-dyed merino possum yarn, I decided to get this as well. So this is from Louis and Lola Yarns, and it's their merino possum DK base, which is 80% merino and 20% possum fur. There's 248 meters in 100 grams, and I got 6 skeins of this as well, so I have more than enough to make a jumper. Oh, 248 meters. That's actually a lot, isn't it, for a DK? I want to make the tulip loop v-neck by Other Loops with this yarn. I pictured that in my head, and I am stuck on it. Like, that's what I'm going to make. I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind when I actually get around to using it, but at the moment I'm picturing this beautiful vibrant pink colour in a tulip loop v-neck. This colour is called Aurora Australis. Sorry, it's definitely Australis. Aurora Australis. And it's hand dyed in Tasmania. I don't think anyone recommended this particular yarn to me, but I don't know, maybe I just googled merino possum and this was one of the first ones that came up. I can't remember how I came across this. Tash from Mostly Knitting recommended their silk mohair, so I got a skein of that as well. So this is their silk mohair base. It's 72% kid mohair and 28% mulberry silk, and there's 840 meters in 100 grams. This is in the colour lilac. I only got 1 skein of this because I didn't really have a pattern in mind, so I figured I would get a nice colour matched fingering weight and I would make a hat or something with it. So that's the plan for this. I do really love the kind of colour shifts in the mohair. I think it's really beautiful, so really happy that I got this, and I think this is the only mohair that I picked up on this trip. So yes, this was a recommendation. As I said, easily influenced. Someone tells me there's a nice silk mohair and I'm like, I'll get it. So we're nearly reaching the end of the Australian yarns. This is the second last one, and this was also recommended by Sarah from Two Pearls in a Pod, and this is from Ochre Yarn. This was an interesting purchasing experience, and if I were to go back, I don't know if I would buy from them again, just because me being in another country wasn't difficult with any of these other yarn brands. I told my friend that the package was on the way, and I got, I was getting emails saying when my package was shipped and all this kind of thing. So I was able to tell her, okay, the package was shipped, it'll be with you in 5 days or whatever. And we generally knew when they were arriving with her. With ochre yarns, I went to buy the yarn, and when it asked for my billing address, I went to put in my address in Ireland. Obviously the shipping address is the one in Australia, my friend's house, and it wouldn't accept an Irish address as the billing address. It was only giving me an option for US, UK or Australia. So that was a bit of a stumbling block, but not a huge deal. I did send them, I didn't want to mess them around, so I sent them an email to ask if there was a way to put the billing address as an address in Ireland, and if not, I was just going to put my friend's address as the billing address as well. But they didn't reply to me, which was fine, but I was kind of waiting for them to reply so that I could place the order. I sent them a message on Instagram as well, and they didn't get back to me. So eventually I was just like, okay, I'm just going to buy the yarn. I'll put my friend's address as the billing address, which is what I did. Once I placed the order, I paid by PayPal, and I got an email saying, thanks for your order. It's on hold until the payment has been confirmed. So I thought that I would get an email once the order was confirmed, once the payment was confirmed, once the order was confirmed, and possibly once the order was shipped, which is kind of standard, I think. But I didn't get any emails like that, and according to my PayPal, the money had been taken. So I was a little bit kind of concerned that they weren't responding to emails or messages, but the money had gone through. So obviously the business was still operating. So I was just really confused by the whole thing. I went looking through their website, and bear in mind, this was the end of May. So I went looking through their website, and I went onto the About page, which I think like most people probably wouldn't click on the About page, but on the website, on the About page, it said, we're on holidays until the 1st of June. So I was like, oh, okay, so that's why they haven't responded to my messages. And maybe once they get back then, the order will be confirmed. But then the 1st of June came and went, and there was still nothing. So I sent them another email, I think it was like the 5th of June or something. And bear in mind, I was going to Sydney like the 13th, but I was leaving Sydney on the 19th. So the yarn had to arrive before the 19th for me to actually be able to take it with me. And at that point, the only email that I'd gotten was the one saying that my order was on hold. So I was a little bit like, what's going on with this order? So yeah, I sent them another email, and I kind of asked them like, what's the status of my order? Because the last communication I got about it, it said it was on hold, but the money's been taken from my account. And if the yarn doesn't arrive by the 19th, then I won't be able to take it with me. So there's no point in me purchasing it. Can you please let me know if it will ship soon, or what's the status of it? And they didn't reply to that one either. At that point, I had placed 5 orders in total, and my friend had received 4 packages. So I thought that the one that was missing was the ochre yarns one. But then a few days later, I got an email from Louie and Lola saying your yarn has shipped. And I was like, oh, okay, so the ochre yarn package must be among the 4 that's already arrived. So I asked her to send me a picture of the packages. She didn't open them or anything. She could have if she wanted to, but she just sent me a picture of the packages, and I could see that one of them had ochre yarns written on it. So obviously it had arrived, which was great, but it was just a bit stressful knowing that, you know, I had forked over all this money for this yarn, and I had no idea if the order had been processed or not. So yeah, I think that's why I say that if I wasn't buying from another country, it wouldn't have been stressful, because obviously if I was living in Australia and I had the package delivered to me in Australia, it would have arrived, and I would have known that, you know, my order went through because I have the yarn here, but I didn't know that the yarn had arrived. And you could say that that's just kind of a difficulty that I kind of have to accept with what I was doing, you know, by ordering from another country. But I do think that a lot of that stress could have been relieved if they were monitoring their emails. And I don't believe that they're purposely ignoring emails. I just believe that they're not monitoring them, or maybe the emails are automatically going to trash and they don't realize they're getting emails, which happens. I know it happens. So that's the story. There's no big lesson to take away from it. I suppose another way that I could have mitigated that stress was to ask my friend beforehand, before, you know, it got to a point where I was stressed, to check the packages and let me know which was which, or like to send me a picture of the packages. But because I was getting email notifications about the other packages, I assumed that each one of those was one that was already accounted for. I don't know if it makes much sense, but yeah, it was a little bit stressful. Just the fact that it was so much money. The only reason I didn't think I was getting scammed was because the shop was recommended to me. That's the only reason. If I had just stumbled across that on Google and purchased that yarn that way, I would have been, I'm 100% getting scammed. But anyway, it's all sorted. I got my yarn. They still haven't replied to any of my emails. I did send them another email to be like, oh, by the way, the yarn has arrived. It was with my friend. She's not a knitter, so like she didn't know what was what, you know. Whereas if it was someone was having yarn delivered to me, I'd be like, oh, what's your order? And I'd be like so invested. But she was like, your package arrived. You know, that was we just kind of left it at that. So yeah, I did send them another email to be like, crisis averted. I have the yarn. But if you don't mind me recommending, you should put, like, if you're going to be on holidays, maybe put a banner at the homepage of your website and maybe put it on your Instagram, because there was nothing on our Instagram about being on holidays either. The most recent post was from a good while ago, so it just looked like that business was dead and I had just handed over money, you know. So yeah, in my email I did suggest to them that maybe they could put a banner on their website if they're going to be away, maybe on the homepage. The other thing that led to my kind of not knowing what was going on was that when you buy yarn online, it'll nearly always say if it's a pre-order or if it's ready to ship. And if it's ready to ship, it'll be shipped within 3 to 5 days. If it's pre-order, it will take 4 to 6 weeks or whatever. But there was no indication of that on the Ochre Yarn website. I assumed it was ready to ship. I don't know why I assumed that, but thank God it was, because if it was dyed to order, I wouldn't have gotten it on time. But there was no indication on their website of whether it was dyed to order or ready to ship. So I suggested that in my email to them as well. I just think it kind of improves transparency and like doesn't leave customers feeling like they're in the dark. Like I kind of did feel like I was in the dark. And as I said, if this shop wasn't one that was recommended to me, I probably would have felt like I was getting scammed. But again, maybe there'll be some people being like, well, you know, what do you expect when you're ordering from halfway across the world? That could also be true. But I didn't have this kind of confusion with any of the other companies. So that's why I feel like just the communication could be a little bit better. The good thing is that I did get my yarn. Sarah recommended this and she said, and I quote, that it's mind-meltingly soft. And I have to confirm that it is mind-meltingly soft. This is their 306 range, so it's 60% merino, 35% yak and 5% silk. And it's a fingering weight, so there's 400 meters in 100 grams. And I also got 6 skeins of this, so I have enough for a jumper or a cardigan. They had 2 yarn bases that I was really torn between. They had this one and also their 304 range, which is, I think it's just merino and yak. There's no silk in it and it's a sport weight. I think it's just easier to find patterns for fingering weight yarn, so that's why I ultimately ended up going with this. But I was kind of thinking like, well, the silk, even though it's only 5% silk, I was kind of thinking, you know, I want a winter woolly fibre. Is the silk going to make it like more summery or springy? But I can't feel the silk at all in it. I'm sure it's in there, I'm sure it's doing something, but it's a good thing for me that I can't feel it, because it does feel like that winter woolly fibre that I was looking for. And if I'm being totally honest, I don't really have a concrete plan for this. Just Sarah sold it to me with the mind-meltingly soft, so I wanted to get it. But I'm thinking I could make a Sadie sweater by Ozetta, a Weekender Crew by Andrea Mary, which I have made before, but it's very fitted and I want a more oversized version with pockets, so that's another option for this. There's also the Eyelet Loop sweater, which is a newish pattern by Other Loops, or the Eva cardigan by Petite Knit. I do love the Eva cardigan. I would love to make it at some point, but I think I would want to make it in a neutral colour, because I already have 2 cardigans. One is yellow and one's purple, and I feel like I need a neutral colour cardigan if I want to add another cardigan to my wardrobe. And this is not a neutral colour, so. And sorry, I forgot to mention the colour, but this is colour number 106, Blossom. So it's obviously a lovely pale pink. The good thing about the Ochre Yarn website is that they have a swatch of each of the colours, so I really liked that. But the paler colours all have a much larger degree of variegation in the colour than the darker colours, which I don't mind. So you can kind of see it here, like this is a bit of a paler patch than up here. And as I said, I don't really mind that, but it did impact the pattern that I was choosing to make with this, because I didn't want to make something with cables or lace, because I thought it was a little bit too variegated for that. I don't know if it actually shows really on camera, but from the swatches on the website, I thought they looked better in a stockinette. So that's why I'm looking at kind of stockinette patterns for this yarn. So yes, that is Ochre Yarn. Bit of a hassle to get my hands on, but worth the effort. The last Australian yarn I got, and I'm curious to see what Australians think of this one, but I hear a lot of Australian podcasters talk about Bendigo Woollen Mills, and I've heard positive things about the yarn, and because it's mentioned so much, I was kind of thinking like, is that a yarn that I should try when I'm in Australia? Should I try and get my hands on some? But I was also kind of wondering if it's like one of those yarns that's spoken about so much just because it's so widely available, not necessarily because it's like a must try. An equivalent brand here for me would probably be like Rico. It would be like hearing someone talking about coming to Ireland and they're really excited to get Rico merino yarn. And I'd be like, really? Okay. Like, it's fine, it's nice, it's affordable, which is fantastic, but it's nothing special. So that's what I thought about Bendigo. I was like, is it worth me getting it? Is it really a special yarn, or is it just that, do people just talk about it because it's affordable, which it is, it's incredibly affordable, or is it actually worth getting? And I messaged Ash from Smash Knits and I asked her this exact question, and she was like, yeah, I think it's worth trying. So that was me sold. She did suggest to get the luxury line, so I got, they're huge, 4 balls of their luxury Aran weight yarn, and this is in the colour Stone. It's 100% wool and it's 300 meters in a 200 gram ball. So as I got 4 balls of this, that is 1200 meters of an Aran weight yarn. And with this, I am almost certain I'm going to make the Esther jacket by Petite Knit. There's a couple of other patterns that I could make as well, but at the moment I'm leaning towards the Esther jacket. In terms of affordability, these worked out at about €10 a ball, which is amazing. It's so affordable. So I got 4 balls, as I said, and yeah, very excited to. I mean, it feels nice. There's nothing wrong with it. It feels really nice. So yeah, I'm looking forward to working with this as well. So that was all the Australian yarn I got, and now we will move on to the yarn I got in New Zealand. And this is what a vacuum packed bag of yarn looks like. This is rock hard. You can knock someone out with this. This isn't actually all of the New Zealand yarn. I got most of this in one shop, and there was some more yarn that I got that I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep, so I didn't vacuum pack it in case I wanted to return it, which I didn't end up doing. And I also got some more yarn in a different shop. So in New Zealand, when we got to New Zealand, we flew into Auckland, and our hotel was actually right around the corner from Prosper Yarn, which I did not plan. But when we got to our hotel, we were too early to check in and there was nobody there. So I was like, okay, we need to do something to kill time for the next hour or two until we can check in. We looked for coffee shops. I also looked for yarn shops, and I didn't think there would be one right around the corner, but there was. And they actually had a little coffee machine as well. So we went there. So I shopped for yarn. My boyfriend got a hot chocolate and we had a good time. Well, I had a good time. I think I spent about an hour in Prosper Yarn. I think I didn't know that it was going to be there, so I hadn't looked at their website. I hadn't planned anything, so I didn't want to buy a jumper quantity of yarn because I knew I had jumper quantities planned for Loopine, which is another yarn shop in Auckland that we had planned to go to the following day, or at least I had planned to go to the following day. So yeah, I was kind of struggling in Prosper Yarn. I didn't know what to get. I knew I would probably end up just getting something for a one skein project, but I didn't know what. So it was either going to be socks or a hat, and that was pretty much it. Prosper Yarn, it was a really cool yarn shop actually. They had yarn that was actually drying, hanging up along the ceiling, so that was really cool to see, and they had an amazing selection. Some of their bases were really beautiful, especially their silk mohairs. I didn't get any, but I was trying to think of an excuse to get one of their silk mohairs because the way the colour took on the base was really lovely. Like, it shifted just really nicely across the base, and yeah, I was trying to think of an excuse to get it, but I couldn't, so I unfortunately left it behind. But at one point I basically asked the owner for recommendations because I had no idea what to get, and she told me that they had a couple of bases that were sourced from New Zealand, which is obviously right up my alley. One of them was the Prosper DK base, which is grown and sourced in New Zealand, but it's 100% merino. And the other one was their Epic base, which is 100% New Zealand half-bred wool. I asked my boyfriend then if there was anything that he liked the look of, and he saw this red yarn hanging on the wall. This is their Prosper DK base, so it's that 100% New Zealand merino. And this is the colour Not Old Lady Red. So it's obviously all over red, but it does have these nice shifts into kind of a more orangey and then a burgundy kind of colour up here. And it's 225 meters in 100 grams. They had a lot of samples in this shop. I had so much fun looking through them. I tried on a sample that they had of the Rabinia sweater by Anne Wenzel, and I loved it because I've always thought about making that pattern, but I wasn't sure if the boat neck would choke me. Sorry, tangent. Anyway, they had a sample of a hat that was kind of a slouchy hat, but it was knit in broken rib. And I think it was knit in this yarn. It looks like it was, but I didn't ask to confirm. But it looks like it was knit in this colour. And I showed that hat to my boyfriend and he loved it. So I think I'm just going to make that exact hat, which makes it really easy. I don't have to try and look for a pattern or anything. We decided then and there what we were going to make with this. So yeah, that'll be a broken rib slouchy hat for my boyfriend. And the other yarn I got then was that Epic base that I mentioned. So it's 100% New Zealand half-bred wool. And this is supposed to be a DK, and it is DK by meterage, so it's 259 meters in 100 grams, but it feels really plump. And actually, if I hold it up next to the merino DK, you can see that it's much thicker, even though they're kind of the same length. So yeah, very interesting to see how plump this is. And I thought that that might be a good contender to hold with the Louis and Lola silk mohair that I got. They are two different shades of purple, I can see, so it'll be interesting to see how they knit up. But I thought it was a good way to get one project out of two yarns. So as I said, I was going to end up buying a purple yarn for this anyway, and I could have bought a different colour of this and made another hat, but that would be another project, as opposed to holding the two of them together and only having to commit to one project instead of two. So yeah, I'm not sure how the marling is going to go because they are different shades of purple, as I said, but I think they'll work out nice. So that was everything I got from Prosper Yarn, and then we went to Loopine, which was highly recommended by a lot of people, and for good reason. I loved that shop. The owner, Alana, she has a YouTube channel as well, so a few people had recommended that. I had actually come across her channel before, so when people recommended it and I went back and watched it, I was like, oh, I can't believe I didn't make the connection there. So yeah, it was really cool to see the shop in person. There was one yarn that I did ask them if they could put aside for me beforehand, because they only had, I can't remember, like just over a jumper's quantity of it left. So I asked them if they could put it aside and I would get it at the end of June. At this point it was a month in advance, so I thought it was a big ask, but they were more than happy to do it, so I was really grateful for that. And that yarn is Wild Earth Yarns Aspen 8 ply, which is 100% Polworth yarn. This is in the shade Marble. It's, as I said, 8 ply or DK weight. That was something I had to get used to. It's that for me it's fingering sport or DK or Aran, whereas in Australia and New Zealand it was 4 ply, 5 ply, 8 ply, 10 ply. So that was something I had to get used to. But yeah, 8 ply is a DK weight yarn. One of the yarns I have is 8 ply. It's DK, but on the label it says 3 strands, whereas to me that's a 3 ply yarn because it's 3 plies. But anyway, so yeah, just something you have to get used to. But yeah, so this is a DK weight yarn. It's 125 meters in 50 grams. I got 10 balls of this, and I also got 1 ball of the colour Emerald. And with these yarns, I am going to make the Holly sweater by Knitting for Olive, or Pernille Larsen, I guess it's by. I'm going to use this for the leaves of the Holly sweater. I did initially ask them to put aside a ball of the red colour as well for the berries, but then I realised that you only need a very, very tiny amount of that, and I didn't see the point in buying a whole ball just to use scraps. I figured I would find something in my stash to do the berries with. So yep, that's going to be a Holly sweater. That is a definite, and I'm going to start that not soon, but like soon-ish, so that I can actually have it done before Christmas, because that pattern has been on my list for 2 years now, so definitely want to get it done this year. While I was there, I also got, this is the bougiest purchase I've ever made when it comes to yarn. A Spincycle dyed in the wool. I never thought I'd see the day where I spent the money on a Spincycle yarn. A bit of background, within my knitting group we've decided to do a kind of a mini knit along, and we're going to be knitting something based on a painting, and the painting is called St. Stephen's Green in Autumn. So St. Stephen's Green is a park in Dublin city centre, and this painting is just a scene from St. Stephen's Green in Autumn. So I'll put a picture up, but it's got the lake that's in the park and then some like golden leaves. The idea within the knit along is to pick one colour or more than one colour or whatever you want from the painting and knit something based on that colour. The rules are very loose because we wanted it to be inclusive. We didn't want to pick a colour and say you have to knit with this colour, because not everyone likes the same colours. So we figured if we picked a painting with a wide range of colours in it, that everyone could find something that they liked and that they could take part. So I was hoping to pick up yarn for the knit along in New Zealand. We're not starting the knit along until August, so yeah, I thought I could get some yarn in New Zealand, and I did see the Miss Rumphius colourway, which is this one here, online on the Loopine website, and most of the colourways that they show are a lot more purple than yellow, and purple doesn't really go with the painting, so I was thinking maybe there'll be a skein with more yellow than purple. So I saw this one in the shop and I thought it actually tied in, I'll just block my face so it focuses. I thought it actually tied in with the painting really nicely. So as I said, the colour name is Miss Rumphius, and this is a shop exclusive colourway. So that's kind of why I wanted to make it work, was because it's a shop exclusive colourway. I just felt like it would be a nice little memento of my trip. Not that I don't have enough yarn mementos already from this trip, but I just figured I've never bought Spincycle yarn before. Maybe this is a good excuse to do it. So, and I also did have a pattern in mind, so I'm going to make the Through Line shawl by Andrea Mary, and this was going to be the Spincycle colourway. I did need a main colourway as well then, and in Loopine they had, okay, the label has been so badly bent, but this is from a New Zealand hand dyer called Happy Go Knitty, and this base is called Mardi, and it's a merino silk and yak base. So it's 60% merino, 20% silk and 20% yak. The colour is Emerald Cake or Cave. I'm guessing it's Emerald Cave, but anyway. And it's a fingering weight, so it's got 366 meters in 100 grams. So that's going to be my main colour. The Spincycle is going to be the Spincycle colour, the contrast colour, I guess. And I'll need to find a white or an undyed yarn to work in there as well. But I have loads of those in stash, so that won't be a problem. So yeah, I thought those were really nice together and a really good kind of representation of the painting. Let me know what you think. Oh, I got 2 skeins of this, I should say. The last yarn that I got in Loopine was another Wild Earth yarns, but this is their haunui base. I had never heard about haunui until I heard Alana from Loopine talk about it on her podcast. Her podcast is called Black Cat Knitting Company, by the way, if you're interested. I'll link it down below. But yeah, she speaks very highly about this yarn. She was always saying how soft it was, so I wanted to try it out, and I got 8 balls of this for a slip over. At that point I figured I had enough jumper quantities of yarn, so I figured I would make a slip over instead. Probably the Lulu slip over by Petite Knit, or else I think it's called the side bow slip over by Noelle Knits. So it's a worsted spun DK weight yarn. It's got 104 meters in 50 grams, and this is the color Truffle. This was the one that I wasn't sure if I was going to keep or not, because after I bought it I just wasn't sure about the color, especially for a slip over. I thought maybe a darker color might be nicer, and they did have like a nice chocolate brown that I was considering exchanging this for. So because we were starting and ending our road trip in Auckland, I didn't vacuum this because I knew we would be going back, and I figured I could change it if I wanted to, but I ended up convincing myself that this will be nice in a slip over. So yeah, I'm excited to work with this. It feels really soft in the ball, and I'm sure it'll be lovely when knitted up. The next yarn I got was kind of random and definitely not something that is only available in New Zealand, so probably wasn't, it was a bit of a gratuitous purchase to be honest, but I just saw it there and I wanted to try it. And it's the Socks Easy Wash Alpaca Sock Yarn. This is 70% alpaca, 30% nylon, made in Peru. There's no tie to New Zealand whatsoever. I'll be honest, a big reason that I bought this was because we went into this yarn shop. We were the only ones in there. We were chatting to the owner for ages, like over half an hour, maybe an hour, not about yarn, just about like life in New Zealand, life in Ireland. And we were there for so long that I just felt like obliged to buy something, and this was on a sale table. I think it was like 20% off maybe, so that's why I bought it. And I do have a friend who I've promised a pair of socks to, and I do need to buy yarn for those socks, so I thought that's another justification. So definitely a bit of a gratuitous purchase, but I'm glad I tried it anyway. I have seen this yarn pop up a few times on other podcasts, so I'm glad I got to try it, but it has no link whatsoever to New Zealand as far as I can tell. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, by the way. But yeah, the colour is chartreuse and it's 387 meters in 100 grams. The last yarn I bought was very spontaneous. We were in Napier and I knew there was a yarn shop called Skeins there, so I had kind of planned to go there, but it was a little bit out of the way of where we were, and I think we were getting breakfast, and I just decided to Google yarn shops, and I saw there was one around the corner called the Knit Nook. So I was like, we might as well pop by and see. We went in and it was a pretty small shop, but the shelves were only like a quarter full. Like it looked like they were closing down, but I didn't really engage in conversation with the owner to ask her or anything. We just said hi to each other, and I kind of wandered around looking at the almost empty walls. I did see that they had this brush tail upcycled Possum merino yarn, and I had seen that in Loopine as well. I was aware of this yarn, and throughout my trip I was kind of debating getting it, but at that point I had bought so much yarn that I just couldn't justify spending any more money on yarn, or on a jumper's quantity at least. I was kind of thinking I'd love to try some and get it for a hat or something, but I also had so much yarn for hats, I just really couldn't justify it. So I saw it in that shop, but I managed to tear myself away, and we walked out, and as I walked out I saw a sign in the window saying sale, everything 20% off, and I was like, okay, well that changes things. So I went back in and I was like to the owner, is everything 20% off? And she was like, oh, it's 40%, I just haven't marked the sign yet. And I was like, oh my god, well that definitely changes things, I have to get some now. So I got 10 balls of the brush tail upcycled merino possum yarn 8 ply in the colour shale. So it's just this grey colour, and when I mentioned at the start of the video that there was an exception to my rule about having a pattern in mind, this is the exception. I have no clue what I'm going to make with this, but at 40% off, I could not turn this down. At full price, this was also cheaper than it was in Loopine. If I were to buy this in Loopine at full price, I would have paid double the price of what I ended up paying for this, getting it on sale in the Knit Nook. The owner explained that they're just moving everything to their online shop, so they were just clearing out their physical shop, so that's why it was on sale. So I got really lucky. There was obviously very little left by the time I got there. I was lucky enough that there was a jumper quantity of this. As I said, this is a possum merino blend. On the label it said possum fur is a super fibre that has a hollow core, making it lightweight and insulating. Merino wool is very fine and soft and helps wick moisture away from the skin, preventing odours and keeping you dry. One thing that I have learned about possum is that it does puff up a little bit when knit up. So even though it's a DK weight, it might knit up more similarly to an Aran weight. And that's one thing that I forgot to mention with the earlier merino possum yarn. Just very briefly going back to this for a second, because I did say that I was going to knit the twist loop jumper, which I think is knit at an Aran weight gauge. And if you were wondering, that's a DK weight yarn, but that's an Aran weight pattern. I feel like this is going to be fine for an Aran weight pattern because it's got the possum, which will help it bloom a bit. But yes, back to this one. I felt incredibly lucky to get my hands on this. I could not turn away from this. I would have never forgiven myself if I didn't pick this up then and there. So yeah, I don't have a pattern. This is the exception to that rule, but I will 100% find something to knit with this. I posted a picture of it on Instagram and I said, I got this for 40% off. And I got some replies from people saying, oh my God, you're going to love that. It knits up really nicely. So yeah, I am super excited about this one. I'm going to go into a brief side note about possums. We don't have possums in Ireland, so I have no skin in this game. But what I learned is that American possums, or opossums, are a different subspecies, or different species. Yeah, a different species than possums that are found in Australia or New Zealand. And I don't know anything about the attitude of people towards possums in America, but as far as I know, they're not seen as a hugely negative thing. Whereas in New Zealand, they were introduced in the 1800s for the fur industry, but their population numbers got out of control. They're basically seen as a pest, and a really bad pest at that. They eat massive amounts of vegetation, which destroys habitat for the native birds. So a lot of the native bird species have gone extinct because of the introduction of possums in New Zealand. There are programs in place to keep population numbers down. One person we spoke to told us that the only good possum is a dead possum. We saw a lot of possum roadkill. Like at one point we travelled 200 kilometres and we counted 10 dead possums. So we were like, okay, there's one possum every 20 kilometres, which is a lot. But one person told us that when they see possums at night, or actually their advice to us was, if you see a possum and it's safe to do so, go out of your way to kill them, to knock them over. We actually did see a possum out on the road and just instinctively swerve to avoid it, because that's what we would do. We would swerve to avoid hitting animals. It just feels nonsensical to intentionally hit them, but that was the attitude of that particular person. So, and it just goes to show that possums are very much a pest in New Zealand. An interesting thing that I read is that possums are carriers of bovine tuberculosis, and that a lot of the programs in place are obviously have the aim of preventing tuberculosis in cows. And there was a 5-year period in the 1980s where possum control was stopped due to a lack of funding. And in that 5-year period, the area of New Zealand where there were wild animals infected with tuberculosis expanded from 10% to 40%, which just shows the impact of possums on the tuberculosis infected population. When you hear all of that, you can understand the attitude toward possums in New Zealand. They're not a native species there. They're very invasive. They're very destructive. So yeah, I learned a lot about possums when I was there. Final fact, at their peak, the population of possums was 60 to 70 million in New Zealand, and through the control measures, it's been brought down to 30 million. So very effective control measures, but obviously they still exist and they're still a problem. So there you go. Every day is a school day. The very last thing I have to show you is actually in the same realm as that grey brushtail possum, because I also got in the Knit Nook more brushtail possum, but this is going to be for a scarf for my boyfriend. So I got 3 balls of the 8-ply yarn in the colour red. Sorry, it's upside down on the label, took me a while to read it. And I got 3 balls of the 4-ply yarn in the colour Firefly. So I would have got 3 balls of the 8-ply, but they didn't have it. So I got 3 balls of 4-ply, and I'll just hold it double. I'm going to make the Nightlight shawl by Andrea Mary of these. I think it's her most recently released pattern, but it's just a scarf with this kind of, it looks like a slip stitch pattern on it, and she uses colour changing yarns, but I thought it would be nice with these 2 contrasting red colours for my boyfriend. So yeah, take a quick guess at the weight of all that yarn. I've just added it up, and I will tell you in 3, 2, 1. It was 5,450 grams. Considering I use about 8 to 9 kilos of yarn a year, it's obviously more than half a year's worth of yarn, which is quite a lot. Some of this I am keen to get started on pretty quickly, like the Christmas jumper. Some of it I don't really mind if it sits in stash for another year, just to have it. So yeah, as I said, I have no regrets. Maybe one regret. No, I wouldn't even say it's a regret, but I just feel like this was probably an unnecessary purchase, if I'm being totally honest, but what can you do? Everything else was a massive success. Really happy with it all, so very much a large net positive on all of that yarn buying. So yeah, that's everything. I need to figure out how I'm going to store all of this because, as I said, my Billy bookcase is full. So I'm going to have to figure something out, but I am really happy with it, and I hope you enjoyed watching. As I said, I will have a podcast episode up soon. I'm really excited to do that 5,000 subscriber giveaway. One of the prizes had arrived just before I left, and the other arrived while I was away. So when I came home, I was able to open it, and I'm really excited to show you all. I think you'll love it. So stay tuned for that. Until then, happy knitting. Bye.